Hello there, and welcome to another stream of consciousness about classic cars. We are the Tyre Kickers, and my name is Matt.
And I'm Max. Coming up on this episode, Classic Car Classifieds. We ask what are the biggest cliches lurking in the small ads.
Also ahead, should we save the car, cruelly dubbed the skip on wheels? We fire up the conveyor belt and ask, is it time to crush or caress the Skoda Favourite?
And we look at some pre-war rollers. But how sensible is it to roll around in a Royce with over 100 years on the clock?
So, with no car tax or MOT needed, we're fired up and ready to hit the road with episode 12 of the Tyre Kickers. So yes, like Arnie, we said we'd be back, and here we are. Thanks for all the banter about episode 11 on our Instagram especially. It's been great reading all your thoughts. And Max, finally, the weather has improved, or sort of. It's sunny right now as we're recording this.
People are out in their cars. There's a neighbour in the next village, actually, who's got an AC Cobra replica, and it sounds absolutely gorgeous. And I heard him pootling through the village this morning, so I thought, yeah, it must be a nice day, because he never goes out unless it's sunny.
So you must have been out and about in your old 60s Porsche, I guess, have you? Oh, no. Because you're selling it, aren't you? So where is it? Locked up at the dealers?
It's so clean. It's just sat on the forecourt at the dealers, and I daren't take it out to drive it because it'll never be that clean again. So they have done a really good job of making it shine. But I'm too scared to drive it, in case it gets muddy. So
what's happened then? Have you sold it yet? Have you got is money burning a hole in your pocket?
No, not yet. Well, to be honest, the idea of the money is burning a hole in my pocket. I've already been going through replacements almost non-stop, I think, since I put it on the market. So,
there's a surprise.
So far, here's the list, and this is just the last 5 minutes while you've been talking. Yeah. Mercedes 230 SL Pagoda, there's no surprise there, is there? Right. An E-Type, either a fixed head or a convertible. A G-Body 1980s 911. Yeah, I have had an E-Type. Yeah. It doesn't stop me wanting another, though, does it? The E-Type may be a convertible this time because I had a hard-top last time. 1980s 911 Super Sport, so that's the turbo-flared arches without the turbo engine. Porsche 911 993 Cabrio, Whaletail, yeah. Rolls-Royce Corniche for my inner Elton John. I went through a period of those for about 2 days this week. Suffix A Range Rover. Why I want one of those, I don't know, but that took up an entire day of thinking. E30 325i Cabrio. I mean, these are all kind of like constantly going around in my head. So
it's quite an eclectic list. I mean, there's a few Roadsters on there, and then you've gone for a Porsche again, and then a Range Rover, which you said you didn't want a Range Rover because they got rusty. So where are we at the moment then in this whirlwind of cars? Where have we stopped? Where's the big pointer on the machine stopped at the moment?
I think the problem is I need all of them. That's the problem. I can't really just narrow it down to one car, because then you need the Range Rover as well. And this is the problem we all have, isn't it? You know, in the never-ending garage, they would just be full of cars. And so I haven't quite narrowed it down, but I would quite like a convertible. But I do also like driving quite quickly, so I don't want to feel it wobble. And convertibles from the 60s and 70s and 80s actually do have a lot of scuttle shake. So I'm not sure when I drive it, I'll be as keen on that as I am now.
You do also, you want to go some distance in it, don't you? Rather than, because a lot of the convertibles, right, there's a lot of 60s convertibles, especially like even E-types, so you're not really going to go massively far in that, are you?
No, I don't think so. So yeah, you're applying logic to this, which is very admirable, but logic plays no part in this whatsoever. It's just whatever is the obsession of the day. But first of all, I'm kind of like getting too ahead of myself. First, I've got to sell the car. So I actually started to write the advert last week and immediately collapsed into those car dealer cliches. So I want to run this past you. Here we are. Here's the ad.
Okay, let's have a look. I can believe that you're into cliches because I used to read some of your scripts that you used to write.
We're still reading them now.
They were littered back then. Right, okay, so let's have a look at your advert then. For sale, 1966 Porsche 912. Well, so far that's pretty good, isn't it?
So good, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
One titled owner. What's a titled owner?
Yeah, me, Mister. That's the title.
You also put one doctor owner.
Well, actually, yeah, that's true, because the first owner was a Californian psychiatrist in San Francisco. So that is true. I mean, that was a long time ago, over 50 years, but, one doctor owner.
The car sent him mad. Well, hold on, you've put one lady owner on here as well.
Yeah, it's 50 years old. I'm sure at some point, or 58 years old, I'm sure in some point of its 58 years, it's had a lady owner. So yeah, that's right.
First to see will buy.
Yeah, not so far. Let's move on.
Quick. Be quick, this car will sell.
Again, not so far. Move on, keep going.
Must be seen.
Yeah, I never understood that, but I just thought I'd put it in. Must be seen. Yeah, of course it must be seen.
Never raced or rallied.
Well, you see, that's an interesting point because actually, when they were doing the interior, they found 2 harness holes in the rear tub. So I might have to remove that. That may not be correct because it did used to have a harness.
Can only appreciate in value you've put down here.
Well, yeah, possibly. Hasn't so far, but you never know.
Let's have a look. Real head turner?
Yeah, no idea what that means.
Here's one that's true. Maintained regardless of cost.
Yeah, sadly, all too true.
Never been out in the rain?
Well, I mean, possibly. No, that's impossible, isn't it? Because it's 58 years old. So, yeah, okay, never been out in a storm with heavy rain. Okay, yeah, I'll take that out. That's a lie.
And finally, it says on the bottom here, no time wasters.
Well, I've never understood that because by definition, as the tyre kickers, we are time wasters. So I've been to plenty of other cars and looked at them and been accused of being a time waster. But obviously, I don't have the time to waste on other people. Just turn up with the cash, the asking price, and buy it. Hold out your hand.
Well, so it's basically a list. Your advert there is a list of the classic car ad cliches. I found some more actually. We'll flip-flop these and see how we go. You always see these sort of expressions: runs and drives great, or my favourite, runs and stops. Which is always reassuring, isn't it?
Occasionally. I like this one, which is, I have too many cars, so this one must go. Yeah, right. So you're a really posh collector when you're trying to sell your Ford Mondeo from the front drive.
Well, also, I have too many cars, but this is the one that's the worst one, so this must go. I saw an advert. There's an advert on one of the listing sites at the moment for an old Mercedes, and behind it is parked another Mercedes. And this expression is, I've got too many cars. And you think, well, the one behind's nicer. I'd rather buy that. Thanks very much. Engine warning light is on. I've been told it's an easy fix. Well, it's not a classic one, but it's, that's popping up more and more, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. There's always, mechanics say it's a really easy, my mechanic says it's a really easy fix. And you go, no, it's not. No mechanic would say that.
Because you'd have done it.
They're not going to. And if it's so easy, do it.
Doesn't use a drop of oil.
Yeah, always a bit of a risky them on that. Particularly your car, because that always leaves a couple of stains behind, doesn't it? So
it's just marking its territory. That's all it's doing. Although it is seemingly marking its territory a bit more than it was last year.
A lot.
Professionally lowered.
That one just is a stab in your heart, isn't it? The idea of somebody just cutting the springs with a hacksaw. No. I tell you, the other one I like is MOT due, but will pass with flying colours. How do you know?
Or sailed through MOT. Our cars always sail through them, don't they? They don't just drive through them. Then with classic cars, needs recommissioning before use. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I see that in a lot of auction descriptions, isn't it? It needs recommissioning. Well, define recommissioning.
And also, why haven't you recommissioned it if it's that easy? You know, the recommissioning is sort of, it's like, it's glibly said like it's just going to be, a bit of oil and filters, but it's not. It's going to maybe be an engine rebuild.
The car's worth 10 grand and it costs 100,000 to recommission it. So it will need recommissioning, but only by somebody stupid. Here's another one that's a popular one in the auction catalogues. Was running when put into storage, usually 30 years ago. So you can guess it's not running anymore. Nice
patina.
Yeah,
usually,
rust.
Yeah. It's got lots of rusty bits they can't cover up. I saw this next one on an advert actually this week. It is a classic, so you will need to spend money on it.
Thanks for the introduction to classic cars. Yeah, that's guaranteed. This is the other one. First to see will buy.
And then when you phone up for it, it's still available. Which is another one. Let down by a time waster usually goes hand in hand with that. I think you see that on eBay quite a lot. Let down by a time waster, and so your initial thing is, oh, okay, yeah, there's a lot of time wasters on eBay. But then you sort of think, well, actually, did somebody actually go and see the car and run a mile? Thanks, mate. I'll pass. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly. Re-advertise due to time waster. No, just re-advertise because you can't sell it. That's the reason. And also, this is the other one: selling on behalf of somebody, selling on behalf of father, sister, mother, brother, or selling on behalf of a mate who's not on the internet. Because there's so many people around these days who aren't on the internet.
Not on the internet, yeah. I mean, there's loads of this sort of stuff still around. And actually, when you do, like, jokingly saying about writing your ad, when you come to write an ad, you do fall into the cliches, don't you? You have to sort of stop yourself. Yeah, so I think we've hit most of them there, Max. But if you're listening to this and you've got some other cliches that we can add to the list, do comment on our Instagram post and let us know.
So I don't have a car at the moment. You are the last man standing with a classic car. So what have you been doing?
Well, I've literally just come in from cleaning it, actually. I've got a show tomorrow. You know, I always say I don't like those shows that you have to sit there all day in a camping jet. Well, I'm doing one tomorrow. I've got to get there at 8 o'clock, though, tomorrow morning. That's bloody early, isn't it? Why are they so early? Have you noticed these classic car things? A lot of them are like very early in the morning. Is that because of the demographic? Is that because mainly we're old people that are like awake at 5 in the morning for no reason?
Yeah, because we're on the way to buy the Daily Mail, isn't it? So you drop into your car show with your Daily Mail, sit there in a camp chair, look grumpy, read all about the politics, and then drive home being even grumpier.
This is what happens. So no, I'm doing that tomorrow. Although there is a mention of trophies potentially up for grabs. So I've given the car more than my cursory 10 minutes on it. I've even had the touch-up paint out. The car's bum hanging out the back of the garage for the last half hour trying to dry it off. So yeah, I've got that to do tomorrow. But I've been out about in the car, actually. I've been running it about as the weather's been a bit better. And you know, I always say there's two things with my car that it doesn't do. One is overheat and the other one is break down. Well, it did both of them. This
Tempting
week,
fate.
just like, oh no. It was acting really, really weird. It started doing really weird things. And I noticed that my radio started cutting out. My music started cutting out at odd times. I thought, why do it keep stopping? And it was doing odd things. And I got to a roundabout. I came off of dual carriage. I came to a roundabout and it sort of cut out. And then I slowed down and it started cutting out. And I thought, well, but it wasn't doing the same thing all the time, if you know what I mean. Long story short, I took it for a drive to the pub because it does like going to the pub. Went to start it up in the car park and nothing, completely dead. And I thought, oh my God, I've jinxed this. I've said this recently to a couple of people. My car doesn't break down, touch wood. And I thought, bloody thing's broken down. So I turned the key and nothing, dead as a dodo. I thought, oh God, perhaps with all the faffing about, perhaps the coil has gone. Perhaps something's not right. Turns out the terminal's hanging off the battery. I went under the seat and the terminal's hanging off the battery. So what it's doing, it kept touching the negative terminal.
Okay.
So, and I believe it does help if you are connected to the battery. In order for a car to run properly, it does help if the battery's actually connected, doesn't it?
Do you know, isn't that nice, though, when it's something simple like that and you can just fix it in 30 seconds rather than actually having to diagnose and go through everything in the ignition system and is it the spark plug and is it that and is it this?
I was like half an hour from home and I was already visualising the sat in the pub car park waiting for the recovery truck to come. But the battery in mine is a bit like a Beetle. It's under the back seat. So you don't see it all the time. And what's happened is just through the bumps and vibration, it's just sort of worked a bit loose. But it's obviously just tapping on it, which is why the radio's cutting out. Why it was probably cutting out when I came off the revs and came down, then perhaps it's, kicking back in instead of the alternator. I don't know, whatever. But anyway, sorted, done, adjusted the timing. She's happy, she's running. And I rewarded her with a good Italian tune-up. So she's happy for the moment.
You're only ever one misfire away from disaster, though, aren't you? And I think that's the thing about classic cars is you're always listening for that moment or sound or something unusual that makes you think, oh no, it's going to go wrong. Because I've broken down so many times in mine now that you're just waiting for it all the time. And I, particularly going along a certain road, you're just saying, please don't break down. Please don't break down. There's no hard shoulder. Please don't break down. Please keep going. And actually, usually it does. But I think once you've broken down a couple of times, it almost sort of, does it ruin the magic of the car? What do you think? Because you say yours has never broken down, but...
I think so. Mine's never broken down and never overheated either. And that's another thing. While this was going on, I went out for a drive and the temperature started going up. Oh, no, it's all falling apart. Turns out it needed a litre of coolant in it. But that sorted it out.
It does help.
I don't know where that's gone. You do lose confidence, don't you, I think, in a car once it starts playing up.
Unless there's a really simple fix like your battery terminal, then you do start to think, is something else going to go wrong? But I think you just need to embrace it. Your car has been pretty reliable, hasn't it? And apart from a few clonks and clunks and stuff, it is pretty good. So I think you should just keep on using it until the inevitable tow truck moment does come.
Just looking at my garage, actually, as well, I'm cleaning the car up, sorting it out. It's become like a mess. Old cars are like ill people, aren't they? They always sort of attract lots of crap.
Junk, yeah.
It's like when your bedroom's normally quite tidy. When you've got the flu and you're in bed for a few days, your bedroom sort of descends quickly into a tip, and that's what my garage is like. There's sort of tissues everywhere and rubbish piling up. It just needs a few plates in there and something with Netflix on, and it'll look like my sort of sick bay. An old pizza, yeah. So that's on my list to do, tidy the garage up.
It's funny, I've always wanted to be that kind of person who has outlines of their tools on the wall and then you just put the tool on the wall a bit like in a prison. But I've never become that tidy person. Mine are just all stuffed in the bottom of a drawer and you spend half your time looking for the tool and swearing and trying to find the tool and it's not the quite right tool.
I found myself oohing and ahhing over some resin flooring the other day.
That is your age.
You know when people paint their garage floors with that grey stuff?
Yeah.
I thought, oh, that would be nice. But it'd still be covered in oil and leaves that have blown in.
Do you notice YouTube Americans always have the cleanest garages in the world, don't they? They've got so much space, and two, they're just amazingly clean with adverts on and old bits of advertising and posters and stuff. American YouTube garages are the best. That's what I want, really. That's what I aspire to be.
Yeah, let's just move there and do that. Yeah, whereas English garages are generally, you open the garage door for 5 minutes, don't you? And the wind blows in all the leaves off the trees and all the crap everywhere. And then generally in your garage in a house in the UK as well, it gets used for overflow household storage. Stuff creeps out from the kitchen, doesn't it, into your garage, and before you know it, mutates.
And if you're a Brit, you can never throw anything away because it might come in useful one day, which it never does.
This is true.
It just becomes the home of every old part from old cars that I've got. I still got a Wolseley Hornet grill for some reason from a Wolseley Hornet I had. It must be at least 40 years ago, but I can't quite bring myself to throw the grill away. It's still on the garage wall. Anyway, so
I can't imagine you in a Wolseley Hornet.
It was 15 quid. So I think that's why I bought the car, because it was so cheap. But yeah, I really like the Wolseley Hornet. I think it was quite cool. It was a Mini with attitude, wasn't it?
That's a good feature we should do on the next episode, is what stuff in your garage have you got that you won't throw away? Classic car stuff. Actually, that is a really good one. If you're listening to this and you can beat Max if you've got something that's more sort of unusual and ridiculous than a Wolseley Hornet grill in your garage that you won't get rid of. Let's start making a list, Max, and we'll rattle it off next episode. But if you can add your stuff on Instagram, we'll put a post up about it. Classic car stuff in your garage that you won't get rid of. It might come in handy one day. I'm sure I've still got bits for my Alpha Spider probably from about 30 years ago.
I've got loads of stuff. I've got loads of bits. Yeah, I'll have to do that. So that's what we've been doing with our cars. Don't forget, we're posting our adventures and mishaps all the time on Instagram. So do give us a follow for lots of bonus content. And this time round, it's going to be bonus junk in your garage.
Yeah, head over to Insta now. Our handle is @TheTyreKickersUK.
Now, lots of great reactions to episode 11, so thank you very much. Let's get into those and give you some honourable mentions.
Yes, we talked about the merits of the 2CV last time and how you have to learn to drive a 2CV. Well, Sam at Southern Cars UK on Insta agrees and says it teaches you about how cars and gears work. She says, my dad gave me one for my very first car and said if you can drive that, you can drive anything. She says that was very true. And it was very unforgiving if you got the gear selection wrong. Max, you've had a 2CV. Is that true?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You kind of like, it would be like slamming a handbrake on. If you got the gears wrong, it would just actually like hit a wall. I'm sure the gearbox would be falling apart. But yeah, the 2CVs did teach you how to change gear well. Now, Lee, who's Lee Hussein 2 on Insta, he says he found our chat funny, all about the car tat and the accessories we used to buy. He says he stuck stripes onto his Datsun 120Y to make it look sportier. Makes it look like Starsky and Hutch, doesn't it?
Well, it covered up the rust as well. That's probably
true.
the main
Hold
advantage.
it together.
Fleming Motor Sales also picks up on the tat chat that we had and those windscreen wiper spoilers that you used to go nuts over and buy by the Boxload Max. He says he loved them as well, and he can confirm they did increase your BHP significantly. I mean, how does that work? Is that like some sort of 70s diffuser or something?
Yeah, something like that. Regular listener Keith D'Souza picked up on our chat about German classics maybe being a bit boring. He says they're actually quite scarce now too, and not as many about as you think.
That's true, actually. I mean, apart from the Beetle, you could probably name German classics you see on a regular basis on one hand, couldn't you?
Yeah, 70s classics are quite rare. I'm thinking you mentioned these BMW 2002s. You don't see many of those about anymore.
Okay, yeah, good point. Mr. Doberbenz says, another great listen, thank you very much. And he's putting out the idea that we should run some sort of Tyre Kickers car and coffee event. He said he'd love to see what everyone is driving. What do we think about that, Max? Are we up for that?
Oh, God,
sure we are.
I could just get my camp chair out and look grumpy at the entrance. No, you can't come in. No, you can't. Or just say, actually, yeah, 25 quid.
You could do both very, very well. We got a nice message from Maguire Photography as well, who's a new listener. He said he binged all the current episodes in just one day. That's hardcore.
God.
And he was listening to episode 11 at the time he made the comment, as he was making school lunches. Well, welcome along to you, Maguire Photography.
And Casey DMGBGT says she fitted a centre console to her 70s Mini back in the day. I remember those.
Oh, yeah.
She said it served two purposes. One, to hold a can of Quattro. Yeah, remember that? And two, because it doubled the value of the car. Because I remember those centre consoles were quite popular, weren't they? You could have all kinds of stuff in them.
We also talked about the classic car wave that we do to each other, and how maybe it's a sign of empathy to other classic car drivers as we'll drive along and wrestle with the cars. Well, countryman James 007 agrees, and he says, while driving, we are all listening to hear what's wrong, and we're all making a plan B about how to fix it. Yeah, it's very true. I always sort of liken driving a classic car, especially when it's cold, to like being an octopus. You're dealing with the joke. The car's a bit stroppy. I mean, mine's certainly stroppy. That's a good point. I'm a bit naughty. I don't fully warm my car up before I drive it off. Is that a bad thing?
Yeah, I do 7 miles before I go over 3,000 RPM.
Oh, yeah. I would wait until the car sort of is running nicely, the temperature gauge is starting to move, and then I'll drive it very gently. Well, yeah, you listen to the engine as well. You can hear when your car's cold. You know, when you first start it up, it's rich and grumpy, isn't it? A bit like yourself.
Poor and grumpy. A couple of great reviews on Apple Podcasts. Zed Zach says he enjoys the wit and banter. Has he got the wrong show? And some decent car chat. And he says he wouldn't mind some longer episodes. Oh, no thanks, mate. It's hard enough doing this. 30 minutes is enough.
See ya. I'm doing XL versions.
Get
Thanks
lost.
Very much. Mark 911D also left us 5 stars and said that he likes the banter and relatable chat. Well, cheers, Mark. He's not making more demands about content, thankfully. And if you've enjoyed this like Zach and Mark, please leave a nice review for us on Apple Podcasts particularly. It does help boost the show.
Yes, and please get involved in the chat on our Instagram. If you're also listening but not yet following us on Instagram, please do. We post lots of stuff in between the shows, so get on there and please get involved.
So you're listening to the Tyre Kickers. We're going to talk 100-year-old Rolls Royces and whether it's a good idea to actually buy and run one very shortly. But first, cast your mind back to the 80s and 90s. There was a car maker that was the punchline to many a joke.
Have you got a wing mirror for a Skoda?
Seems like a fair swap.
What do you call a Skoda with a sunroof?
A skip.
And what do you call a Skoda favourite on top of a hill?
A miracle.
Now, all very good Skoda jokes, but we've come a long way since the Skoda Estelle was steered only by geography teachers and communists.
So this week we're going to test our prejudices by selecting the Skoda favourites for the crush or caress test. Now, this is a perfect cheap classic and probably the last real Skoda before the company was snapped up by VW. So can the final genuine Skoda model be a good starting point for classic ownership? Well, what do we think, Max? The favourite? Will we put it on the list?
Well, I thought the favourite at the time was quite impressive. Launched in 1987, arrived here in the UK in 1989. I mean, it was nothing special. It was a bit like the Dacia Duster is. It was the bargain basement car. 1.3 engine, 56 horsepower, front-wheel drive, 5-speed manual. So nothing exciting, but I do quite like base model cars because they're just exactly what it says on the tin. Not fancy, not special, they're just basic transport. And I do quite like that out of cars. It's kind of appealing to have a car as simple as that. What do you think? I mean, the favourite, could it be considered as a classic?
Yeah, just looking at pictures, I had to look at a few pictures to sort of remind me of what it looked like. And I'm getting sort of Citroen Visa vibes. It's not really that exciting as a car. It's very slabby and sort of late 80s, 90s. I don't know whether I would sort of, in my eyes, that would be a classic. I don't know if it's quite old enough. I suppose we should look at the values and things of them. Have we got any examples to look at?
Well, that's a good question, because the problem here is I can't actually find any for sale in the UK, not a single one.
Really?
And if it's not for sale, we can't crush it and we can't give it a buff. So the favourite's a bit of a problem, because we were going to discuss this as a kind of like a great 90s starter classic, but there aren't any out there. So I'm guessing if we're going to talk Skodas, we need to go back into the 80s and a slightly more famous Skoda. What about a Skoda Estelle?
No, actually, Skoda Estelles were the ones that actually the jokes were more about, I think, weren't they? Because they were the sort of Trabant-looking ones, weren't they? Which were like communist-era cars.
Yeah, exactly right. The Estelle in 1976 was Britain's cheapest new car, and it was also dubbed Britain's worst new car because it was Well, let's face it, absolutely rubbish.
Yeah, you used to see pensioners driving them, didn't you? Because there was so much shame about driving them when they were launched here that I think they just went for the people. As you say, it's the Dacia Duster kind of market, the cheapest car that you could get. Engine in the back, if I remember rightly, and sort of very basic mechanics, weren't they? You were buying a car from the 70s, essentially, weren't you, with that? You weren't buying... 80s had fuel injections, probably still running on a carb, wasn't it?
I think it had a single carb. Yeah, it's interesting because the Czech designers of it wanted to put the engine in the front where most engines go, but communist central planning said you couldn't, so they had to stick the engine in the back but the cooling in the front. So it didn't cool very well. There were lots of head gasket problems, and it was just very, very slow. And because it had the engine in the back and it wasn't really designed for it, it used to handle really, really badly. It used to spin out all the time. But then, strangely, it also won lots of class wins in the RAC rally. I think it had 17 class wins for some bizarre reason.
Yeah, there was that. I think it was winning. It was winning rallies, but it was still a laughing stock. I remember, at school, it was the joke, wasn't it? It just reminded me of another Skoda joke. Why does Skodas put their engine in the back?
So you can warm your hands up while you push it.
There you go. But it was a laughing joke, wasn't it? How do you double the price of a Skoda?
Fill it with petrol.
But actually, looking back on these now, I think I haven't seen one for a while. But I think if that rocked up to a show, that Estelle, I don't know. I think that would be quite an interesting classic car. You've been on the internet. You've had nothing else to do, so you've had a look on the internet. Have you found one? Have you found one for us?
See, this is a problem about these really bad cars, like the Favorite and the Estelle, is they're so rare now because everybody got rid of them or they were crushed for scrappage that it's very difficult to find one. So if you did turn up at a show in one, you're probably going to be the only person there in an Estelle, where E-Types and Aston Martins, there's going to be loads of people. So if you look on your screen here, this is probably the saddest car on the internet. This is a 1988 Skoda 130 GL. Now, it looks like it's collapsed. All four tyres are flat. It's brown. It's got rust stains down it. There is a bin bag covering up the window that's broken. There's some tape over the sunroof, isn't it? It just looks like the saddest case ever. And it was at an auction with no reserve, and it got 485 quid. Who on earth paid 485 quid? They paid 484 too much for that.
Good God, it looks like it next stop is rehab. It looks like he's made some bad life choices. This is not the one I remember, though. This isn't the one I remember. The one I remember was sort of more sort of 70s looking with, and they were usually orange. This must be like a second generation. It's an 88. So I wonder if we go back in time. Yeah.
This is the Mark II, because this is an 88, so this had slightly better cooling and it had slightly better brakes, although it hasn't stopped it just falling into total disrepair. Just have a look at the interior on this. Scroll through the pictures, because the interior, it's a cloth interior, and it is just absolutely disintegrated with moisture. It's just fallen apart. You know, cloth interiors usually get eaten by mice. Well, this one's just collapsed with moisture. Oh my God, I've just got to the interior by a photo. I don't know about a barn find. That looks like a post-nuclear explosion find. That's bad. I think that's a health hazard. You couldn't even sit in that to drive it. Yeah. You'd actually die. You'd have a respiratory disease if you sat in that. But the thing about the Estelle is, it is super simple. So if you want to do some mechanics, the mechanics are dead simple. If you look at the engine on that, it's completely rusted away. But I do get it that it's a very basic classic car, and it's probably one of a kind, particularly in that kind of shape. So I do get the Estelle. If you want to be the only person at a show with a Skoda Estelle, then that's the car for you. While we've been talking, I've looked up a Mark 1 actually, and they are a bit cuter, a bit more sort of Golf Mark 1 vibes to them. You know, it's sort of single round headlights. Yeah, I think they would be a bit more interesting. If one of those rocked up at a show, I think it would be interesting, especially if it was in orange and maybe you could rally it up, actually. That could look quite good. You know, we laughed at them at the time. What do you think? I've sort of gotten a bit of an affection for them, actually. I think there's something about them. You know, they're from that communist era. They've got very Trabant similarities. You know, there's a story there. There's the rally wins, like you say, and I think if you pick right in the right colour, I think you could pull that up at a meet and
park it next to a DB5 and more people would look at that.
Yeah, and you're certainly not going to be paying DB5 money, are you, to recommission it? Yeah, I think there's something utilitarian and communist and 80s and 70s. Is there a kind of communist chic? Can you have that? Is that possible? I think it's certainly an interesting car. And the rallying part of it, I mean, the rallying history was amazing. I'm guessing because the engine was in the back, it had really good traction. So as a rally replica, that's a great looking car. And certainly cheaper than, say, Metro 6R4 or maybe even a Lancia Stratos. So if you want a cheap rally replica, that's the car to have.
Well, let's switch off the crusher. Let's turn the conveyor belt off. I think we found your next new classic car, Max, a tricked out Skoda Estelle. Moving on. So how do you fancy driving something older than even Max? Difficult, but what about a pre-war Rolls-Royce? Not pre-Boer War, pre-Second World War.
So I came across these by accident searching for Rollses earlier this week. Pre-war stuff, 1920s, 1930s. It seems remarkably good value for money at the moment. Let's have a look at this one, a 1926 Rolls 20 horsepower saloon. So that's 98 years old, but still looks amazing. A Rolls 2025, 32,000 miles. So it's blue with a black roof. It's got the proper Rolls-Royce sit-up-and-bed grille. It's got the steering wheel that's going to kill you in an accident. It's got the windscreen that's at 90 degrees to the airflow. So proper old-fashioned British stand-up to the airflow. I think these are really quite cheap. This is £57,000 for a four-seater. Now, I think about these cars is they are going to be slow. But it's no slower than driving, say, a Series 1, 2, 3 Land Rover, is it? You could drive that to the pub 4 up and have a really good laugh.
I think it's really, really nice. I mean, a lot of the pre-war cars that look grand, but they just sort of feel a bit boring, whereas this has got something about it. It's got a bit Downton Abbey about it, hasn't it? Or you were saying it's sort of a bit like the baddie in Bond, in Goldfinger. The two-tone really helps. So the light blue against the black is really nice. And at the end of the day, you're driving a Rolls, aren't you? But would the age of this put you off? I think I would sort of stop me in my tracks a little bit.
I think all the mechanics are going to be very simple because the mechanics are going to be well over 100 years old. So I don't think that would put me off. And I do think there are specialists around. There's a specialist in the Cotswold, actually, that looks after these pre-war rollers. What's an interesting fact about this one, the first owner was Christopher Albert Bird of Albert Bird & Sons, better known as Bird's Custard. He bought it in June 1926. And like all of these Rolls-Royces of the period, Rolls-Royce made the chassis. And then you had a coach builder. You commissioned a coach builder to build the body of your choice. And this is a Park Ward one. So it looks fantastic, doesn't it? I really do think there's something in these pre-war rollers, is that they're quite cheap now. Most of the work has been done. It's super simple engineering. And also you get to drive at 40, 50 miles an hour, sometimes a little bit quicker. So not even that slow.
Looking at this one, it's almost like a show-winning car, isn't it? I mean, it's almost, the engine's beautifully clean and everything is very, very nice. I mean, I was, it would be out of my comfort zone straight away because it's just so old. But like any car, I suppose you just learn it when you get it. If you do enough research, like you do, you spend 2 years looking it up. Why don't you get one of these then instead of your Porsche?
Well, it'd be very tempting. It's not going to really do some tail-out antics around the roundabout in the wet, is it? But I do think you'd have good fun driving it in a different way. Let's have a look at this other one. This is a 1928 Rolls-Royce 20 horsepower. Again, it's the Rolls-Royce chassis, but this one's got the Compton Sport Saloon body on it. So this is a completely different coach builder. This makes it a little bit more sporty, more swoopy. It's a bit smaller. This is a really, really good-looking car.
It is, yeah. I'm getting a bit top hat and tails sort of feeling with this one. It looks like it's off to the races, doesn't it? I suppose that's the thing. You have to do the timing, don't you, as you drive these old cars? You sort of advance and retard and do the throttle on the steering wheel, isn't it?
Yeah, they're a little bit more involved to drive, but I don't think it's anything that you can't learn pretty quickly. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a car connected to an engine and we can work it out. But what is good about these is just the style. Inside it's got that kind of Art Deco look. And what was interesting about this particular car is it was sold as a Rolls-Royce chassis. And then I think 20 years later, somebody else took it to a coach builder and they built a completely different car on top of the chassis. So it's kind of had two lives, if you like. And that's what's quite exciting about these cars, is that basically you could customize them as you went along. But that's a super smooth looking car.
I love all the little details in it as well. In the door cards, which are beautifully bound leather, in the pocket. There's a little original book that says instructions for the care and running of the 20 HP Rolls-Royce car. And then you go to the next picture and there's Coach Builder's plaque. Insignia, just put there. J. Compton, 69 Westow Street, Crystal Palace, London, SE10, Rolls-Royce Specialist. I mean, you feel like you're driving like well, it is a piece of time, is it? It's like a museum piece, but it's a usable museum piece. It's so beautifully made, isn't it?
And also, because it's custom built, you're driving the only one of its type. And we've all, in Britain, we've all got a bit of a kind of country house Downton Abbey syndrome. So this would be a great thing to drive. Let's have a look at the next one. This is a 1932.
Hold on, before you move on, it's like, we were talking about cars when the guy's got too many in their collection, they're slimming out the collection. Look through the window of that last one. It's got light aircraft out the side of it. So he's slimming down his collection by getting rid of the car.
He's got a Piper Super Cub as well, where he certainly parked next to a Piper Super Cub. Interestingly, it's got a German registration, that plane, so I don't know what it's doing here, whether that photograph is taken somewhere else. But yeah, he likes his Super Cubs, and who doesn't?
Why not? Well, so what else have you got? It's a 1932 you found as well.
Bit more rakish. This is a bit more of a villain of the Rolls-Royce cars, I'm thinking. Again, a Rolls-Royce 2025. Again, not expensive. This one's £32,000. The last one, by the way, I didn't mention the price. That was a mere, let me just close this page, £42,000. This one's even cheaper, 1932, 2025, H.J. Mulliner Sport Saloon, £32,000. Now, it's a little bit more tired, I suppose. Actually, in the advert, they're calling charming and patinated. Actually, just a bit tired. But it is a great-looking car. The first owner was Sir Archibald Bell Black QC, residing in Edinburgh. Fantastic. And it does look like a QC's car. You could be burning around the streets of Edinburgh, parping, getting people out of the way. And I just think they've got so much presence.
Looks like a sofa, literally a sofa, a leather sofa in the back of that. I mean, that's just beautiful, isn't it?
There's so many cliches about these. You could be hanging out of them on the running board, shooting a machine gun in the 1930s. You could be sitting in the back, going on the way to a kind of royal garden party. I do think they're super stylish cars. I think this is one of the things that you and I find a lot of these things when we're doing the research into this. I think we need to go and drive one. I think it'd be really interesting to see what they're like.
That'd be fascinating. I mean, I've got to say, out of the three, the second one's grabbed me. I don't know why. There's something about it, but the details are fantastic. I love like the trafficators, illuminated trafficators that come out the side and stuff like that. But you're buying it's sound like Mike Brewer. It's a lot of car for the money, but you are getting so much, aren't you? I'll tell you around. Just bought a 100-year-old roller.
You get a great deal, don't you? I mean, there's so much style involved in these for like £40,000-50,000. I think I prefer the first one, the 2025. Which belonged to Albert Bird of Bird's Custard, because it's slightly bigger. You could get more people in the back. You could go to the pub. It's a great pub car, isn't it, for a sunny Sunday afternoon?
Yeah, I mean, let's go and drive one. Yeah, let's give it a go. What do you think the running costs and the realities of owning one would be? I mean, the engines are 100 years old. They don't look visually much more complicated, but they're going to be, aren't they? Or finding people to work on them is going to be more difficult. Do you think it's going to be more expensive than running like a 60s car?
I think there's going to be fewer engineers around who know them, but these 2025 chassis, they were pretty basic and they produced a lot of them. So I think there's plenty of parts around. There's very good Rolls-Royce specialist backup. There's some great specialists out there who can do it. I think, we always talk about get a specialist who's near you. Well, that might be a bit more of a problem because there might only be 3 or 4 really good specialists in the UK. But I think it's worth a try, isn't it? And I'm guessing this technology, because it's old, is basically reliable because it's simple, isn't it? The bodies are going to be difficult because they're coach built. So anything coach built just has a huge bill on it if the bodywork needs doing. But again, what's there to do? In lots of these cars, they've been restored 2, 3, sometimes 4 times in their life. So they've been over a few times. So I don't think there's anything that scary, but I think we need to go and drive one to find out. So that's it for another episode of The Tyre Kickers. 40 minutes of your life you'll never get back.
Coming up on the next episode, classic vans and trucks. Do you see beauty in an old Transit or a pickup truck? Or are they just a bit too Billy Bob or Bob the Builder?
So thanks for listening and see you on the next episode of The Tyre Kickers.
Bye for now. I'm out of breath.
Is it the stairs, love? Is it too much?
I was just getting up out of my chair.